Substack. And I am joined tonight by Jackie Davidson. She's a candidate for the State House of Representatives here in Idaho. And so, without further ado, I'll ask Jackie to tell us about yourself and what prompted you to run in this race.
Sure, Brian. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. My name again is Jackie Davidson, and I'm running for legislature District 16B here in Idaho. I'm a 40-year Idahoan, and so I've lived here. I have three adult children who were all raised in Boise, and I have three grandchildren. That's kind of one of my whys. Why I'm doing this is for my grandchildren. I have had two businesses, been pretty much self-employed. I had a business that called Data Technologies Group, and I still have that business. It's an open business doing accounting and supporting accounting departments, installing software, and I sold some accounting I've sold a lot of different accounting softwares and stuff like that. So fairly technical. And then I had a business that did web development. So I supported marketing departments in businesses. And so I think that gives a real technical spin to the legislature. Everything has to be just right on the dot for things to work, to be in balance and to look good on the screen and stuff like that. So I just a little bit more about myself. I am a precinct committeeman, precinct committee woman, 1614, and I've been working with the GOP for the last couple of years. Been working pretty hard. Last fall, I helped actually establish the Get Out to Vote for the Boise, what's it called? Boise Chamber.
Council?
Yeah, council. Thanks. Sorry, Boise Council, and helped get Lucy Willits on the Boise Council. So that was really exciting for us. And this spring, I put 27 people on the ballot for precinct committeeman. So just been working really hard with the GOP and learning about the legislature and how to do bills this spring. Well, I was in June, went to the Idaho State Convention, the GOP convention, and I had a resolution. I sponsored a resolution that was actually done with another gentleman with election integrity, and that resolution did pass the committee, and so it also passed the floor, so that was pretty exciting as well. So just been trying to better the Idaho or keep it good, and what else is that? I think that's about it.
Well, that definitely covers the basics. So I know that you ran for this race in 2020 as well.
Yes.
And obviously fell a little bit short. How would you say that this year is different, both in the the playing field, the environment that we find ourselves in 2022 rather than 2020, and also how you're approaching the campaign?
Well, I know a lot more. I was running for PC and precinct committee woman and legislature as well, and I didn't know anything. I didn't have a staff, or I just did it myself, and so I worked hard and got 42%. So thought that was pretty good. So this time I know what I'm doing. I've taken some classes leadership classes on how to campaign. I've got a real good solid foundation of volunteers and people helping, and so we're already canvassing and going out. We're having our third meet and greet on August 30th. So we're really working a lot harder, but there's more people doing it. And I think as far as I know, in the 2020, of course, we had the presidential election, so there was a high turnout. Um, but I think in this election, there are a lot of people who are, dissatisfied with some of the things that are going on. And so I think we're going to have a good turnout as well.
Well, that's good. Um, since it's basically a rematch against your opponent. It's kind of like the race is a referendum on his time in the legislature as well as your ideas. What are some of the things that you've noticed that he's done that you think do not serve his your constituents and that you disagree with?
Well, I did go through his voting record, and some of the issues that I saw was he's totally against any tax decrease. For example, he voted no for the the grocery tax on your income tax credit, the $20. He voted no on that, and he voted no for the income tax reduction, and he voted no. For example, uh, there was a bill, it did pass, that had the health and welfare provide the city clerks or the county clerks with people who had passed away. And so, in order so that they could take those people off of the voter rolls and keep the voter rolls a little bit cleaner, and he voted against that. So that was pretty surprising to me. He's, uh, you know, pretty much along with the Reclaim Idaho. Um, and so he's going to vote no for anything that is advantageous to the people, in my opinion.
I noticed that a lot here in Idaho, a lot of Democrats, they'll run their campaigns uh, ignoring all the controversial issues and just focusing on a few wedge issues. But then once they're in office, they just rubber stamp anything the Democrats support, which is a lot of awful stuff. So what are some specific ideas that you have that you would like to see done in the next legislative session?
Okay, well, I would definitely like to see some reduction in expenses. I feel like there's some bloating going on in the government, a little bit too big of a government. I'd like to see of course, our taxes reduced. I've been talking with another legislator about some ideas on the property tax. I don't think that we should be paying property tax. I think that, uh, you know, gives us, doesn't give us the ability to own our own property. So I've been talking to him about that. Basically, maybe putting the value, a lower. I don't think that we should have it at all, but maybe he wants to put it on an index situation. But I think we should work on, Idaho I believe, is being overtaxed. We have income tax, we have property tax, we have sales tax. Most states, they either have income tax or sales tax. Like Washington has sales tax, but Oregon doesn't, and income tax as well. So they just have one, either income tax or sales tax. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the property tax go away and the income tax go lower.
Mhm.
Grocery
Yeah.
tax, well, that's a complicated issue.
Yeah, property taxes, that's a big issue. It's been coming up every session the last couple of years, and it's going to be up again this year. Personally, I feel like the property tax itself is just immoral because it gives the government a permanent lien on your home. If you ever stop paying the state, the government, then they can just come and kick you out. And so it would be great to get rid of it, but then how do you handle the cities and other entities that rely on property taxes to, how do you completely change that payment program?
Well, maybe it would, there's levies and there's bonds. Maybe we put that into a separate city tax, maybe, or a separate tax that it takes it away from the property, and then you just pay that. So we're still going to have to pay for some of our services. We have to pay for the police, we have to pay for the fire, and the schools and stuff like that. I'm not against that at all. I'm against that, like what you said, a lien on your property. So maybe we could make it as just separated out. Okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing whatever the comes out of the legislature next session on that, because I know they've been wrangling with it for a while.
It's controversial too, um, but I think something needs to be done because I think we're being overtaxed.
For sure. Let's jump around on a few of the issues here. I was looking at your positions on your website and your literature. You mentioned medical freedom. It's kind of faded into the background now, but back in 2020, 2021, there was a big brouhaha over vaccine mandates. How would you protect Idaho workers from such mandates while, respecting the freedom of businesses to operate as they please?
Yeah, that's a tough one too. Of course, I'm against all the mandates.
Mhm.
I think employers should be able to do, what they want as far as their business is concerned, but I don't think that they should be able to require a shot to keep in business. You know, and I think that passed the House, and that bill passed the House, and that passed the Senate,
Mhm.
and they vetoed it.
That's right. It was going to um, stop the mandates, I believe, for a year, and then the governor vetoed it, and they could not overcome the veto.
Right. So, you know, people want that. They want the free. There's been a lot of people that have lost their jobs because they're, being forced into putting something into their body that they don't know even what it is. So I think my biggest uh, thing that I want is people should be able to make those choices for themselves.
Would that go for things like mask mandates in schools as well?
I agreed. Yeah, yeah. I think it was a little harsh what happened, and some of the things aren't, being backed out, and especially like this, the vaccine. If people want to take the vaccine, they should be able to take the vaccine.
Sure.
But if it doesn't want to do that, they shouldn't be forced or be punished by losing their jobs because of it. You know, people who are taking the vaccine are still getting COVID. You know,
We'll see if YouTube lets that stay up.
sorry.
Yeah. I don't know what their policies are these days. It's hard to keep track. But it really does, going along those lines, it does seem like there's always these manias that come through where, these, you know, radical ideas filter down from the federal government to corporations to schools, and they feel like we have to, there's no time to go through the legislative process, there's no time to actually see how this works in the real world, we have to have these mandates for this or for that, and if you oppose them, then you're standing against science, you want people to die. And
Mhm.
that's I personally, I think we need a legislature that is willing to step in to protect the citizens from, you know whether it's the federal government or big corporations or whatever, public school systems. The legislature should be on the side of the people. Seems basic, right?
Yeah, I'm a real proponent of the Constitution, and the Constitution says we the people, not we the government. So, we need to work for the people and not for, the big corporations and the lobbyists and the um, labor unions, etc. Uh, we need to be working for the people and for their rights.
Mhm.
That is the most important thing in America is our rights. And you take those away and we have, a potential problem.
Well, the Constitution, whether the state constitution or the federal constitution, it's just a piece of paper if we have governments completely ignoring it.
Yeah, and they are. So I'd like to bring the Constitution back.
Yeah.
To- yeah.
So speaking of another constitutional issue, you mentioned in your literature you want to protect children from obscene materials and pornography in libraries and schools. How do you draw that line where you protect children from these things and keep them away from children, but at the same time respecting the First Amendment rights of, say, public libraries?
Well, of course, I believe that the parents should have every right to read any book that that they choose to. The libraries, if they are putting X-rated books or trying to indoctrinate the children, we had to take the Bible out because they said it was indoctrinating, but then they replaced it with this, A is for activism, T is for trans, these books. I just don't think that it's the school's position to be providing some. I don't know if you've seen any of these books, but they are X-rated.
Hmm.
X, and if you don't believe that they're there, go look because they're having a big thing in Meridian where they're showing them and having the discussion on it. So I people say, well, we don't want to censor books, but this is X-rated stuff, and I don't think it's appropriate for children to be being taught these inappropriate things. So I have talked to several people who have said, well, and some schools have actually done this. So some, the schools aren't bad. But they have a room where all these inappropriate books are, and then if the parent signs the form, then they're allowed at the very end of library time, they can go in there, pick out a book, and bring it back out. They can't hang out there, but they can go pick out a book and hang out. So that would be maybe a alternative, but I don't think they should be in there at all.
Yeah. We have laws against children buying alcohol or tobacco
Yeah,
or guns or driving cars. There's laws that our community has put in place to say that children are different than adults.
right.
And I know last session there was a House Bill 666. That's an easy number to remember. That would have criminalized the distribution of obscene and pornographic materials to children, but the Senate just decided not to hear it. Would you
Think it should,
support something like that?
yes, absolutely. I would. Mhm. I think it should have passed.
Yeah, well, that Senate, well, it's going to be a different Senate this year, so we'll see what sort of things happen next session. Hopefully, you can be there in the House to push some good things, and then our new conservative senators can carry them across the finish line.
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited about that.
Let's see, what's another topic? I guess while we're hitting these things, ESG has been in the headlines a lot. Environmental social governance. You've got um, big banks and lending firms and investment firms establishing these social justice, left wing activist rubrics for determining whether a company is worth investing in. And it seems clear that eventually it's going to trickle down to the average people, and we're going to start being graded by our banks on whether or not we support the proper causes. What can you do in the legislature to protect Idaho citizens from this, both citizens and small businesses?
I'm pretty sure there's going to be some legislation on that. We met with the tr- is it the treasurer Ellsworth, the awesome lady, and she's putting up some legislation to keep the ESG out. Um, I mean, it's pretty hard. I mean, you can maybe regulate the banks and stuff, but um, it's really becoming prevalent in all aspects of life. I mean, I've seen it. I don't know if you have, but just I'm trying to think of an example. Um, just if you aren't going to believe in, the climate change, then you shouldn't drive a car, you know, stuff like that.
I just saw in the news that I think it's in Australia, a certain bank is going to start refusing auto loans for non-electric vehicles, and
Yeah.
that's the sort of thing I think we're going to see trickling up here, where
Mm,
they're trying to nudge us in a certain direction, and of course that direction is always left.
right. Eh, I'm not against electric cars, but I just don't think, I'm wondering if there's enough electricity to run them all. I see problems.
We're going to need a lot of windmills to power all those cars.
We can put them on our.
Um, So let's see. In your literature, you say you want to support family farms and industries instead of large corporations. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. How do you protect family farms and maybe small businesses from being swallowed up by these giant corporations that are just taking over everything?
Well, it goes back to the same thing. Do you over-regulate, or do you give them the freedom? Maybe I definitely think that we should have some legislation that says that we will not sell any of our land to corporations or that have ties to China. And I see that happening across the
Mhm.
United States. So that would be one thing. Um, but we need to make sure that, like, they don't sell or I just went on a thing today with a bunch of farmers, and man, they were just the greatest people. We need to make sure that the economy is right so that they don't have to sell.
Mhm.
And um, we need to make sure that, you know, they have a stable, foundation. We're not telling them that they can't buy fertilizer, or that they can't, they got to get rid of their cows. um, you know, we shouldn't be, we as the people should not allow um, the government to be telling the farmers, how to run their business. And I think that by strengthening their economy, they won't be bought out by these large corporations. You know, it,
Maybe some sort of you know we
incentive
need we
or
need to encourage young people to go into that business. It seems like over the last 50 years, it's been just an ongoing tragedy as family farms that have been in their families for generations have to be sold off because there's nobody left in the family to take them over.
right. And so these big corporations buy them up. So I don't know how you could I'm not really good for regulating. That's what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say. Um, I I don't want to say, oh, you can't buy these people out. But if we can give some incentive for the farmers and to, increase their profit margin and their, um, economy and stability, I think that would really help.
Well, speaking of government regulation, one of one of the things I've noticed is that like the governor vetoed the bill that would have prevented businesses from enforcing their vaccine mandates. And in his explanation for it, he said he didn't want to regulate business. And that is a standard Republican point that we want to stay out of business's way. However, our legislature and governor, going back decades now, seem to have no problem giving money to businesses, whether in the form of tax cuts or tax rebates, um, or in the form of direct subsidies, grants. This big, massive tax rebate for Meta to put their Facebook data center down in Cuna is, one of the more prominent examples. What's your position on things like corporate welfare and subsidies? I mean, the argument for them obviously is that you want to promote business and, create jobs.
Right. Um, well, I'm not real happy about the Meta coming in. I think they're going to take too much water, and I think that we have to be real choosy about who we're going to give tax. I would rather give the tax breaks to the family farms and the small businesses, and let's, there's just too much of this big corporate takeover. So instead of giving the tax breaks to the big corporations, let's give more tax breaks to the small businesses. It seems like they're just trying to, you know, put us people out of business, and so we need to fight that. And I think that a way to do that is by giving our Idahoans the tax breaks
Mhm.
and not corporations for coming in. I mean, Meta, they might employ 100 people, is what I'm hearing, and they're not going to be, they're not going to be like Micron that's employing a lot of people.
Well, it doesn't take too many people to run, a big data center. It's not like the factory floor of, yesteryear.
It just takes a lot of water.
Yeah. So shifting over to a much less controversial issue, with regards to abortion, here in Idaho, we have the trigger law and the heartbeat law, and they're both facing litigation, although the judge refused to enjoin them. So the trigger law, I believe, goes into effect tomorrow as we record this. Um, so that's great, obviously, from a conservative pro-life perspective. Would you push for more abortion restrictions in the legislature, or do you think this is a good place to put it?
Um, I think that I've gone over that trigger bill. I think it's a good bill. I mean, of course, I would like to see all abortion removed. My personal belief is that, it's at conception. Life begins at conception. Um, but I think that trigger bill does a good, you have to prove that there was a rape or incest, and there's a way to, you know, talk to them before, and it's not on the person that's getting the abortion. It's the doctor that gets in trouble, that gets the felony. So, we need to love on these people and explain to them what, I'd like to see some more support for those organizations because they're going to be needed, that will help uh, with people who would otherwise go in and have an abortion. The adoption, I think the adoption laws should, making it easier for people to adopt because it's so expensive, and you know, so we could do that. Um,
Do you see a role for
just
the state legislature in maybe reforming adoption here in the state and not worrying about the other states?
Yeah, I think that would be something we can do in conjunction with that trigger bill, and so I don't really like the 12-week bill, heartbeat bill, but
I'm I have the opinion that any restriction is good. Just keep pushing it to the point where eventually we have a state and a legal system that respects the humanity of the unborn child.
I
Um,
totally, yeah, that's where I'm at too. Let's keep pushing it. And let's put some services in place that can help people who would normally just go and get an abortion. The adoptions, the um, helping the child. Say it's a teenager. Helping them learn how to take care of them. And there are already good places that are doing that, and just you know build that up so that they have a better choice than killing their kid, their baby.
yeah, definitely. Speaking of teenagers, another issue that is likely to be before the legislature this year is some form of school choice. Arizona just passed a sweeping school choice law that is, really the most far-reaching in the nation so far. And I know there's several legislators here in Idaho who'd like to do the same. And I've seen various ideas, a voucher system where you get a voucher from the government to take to a private school or use for homeschool materials, or a tax rebate like the grocery tax refund, or something, an educational savings account. That there's all sorts of ideas. Do you have any strong opinions on school choice in the first place? And if so, what do you think is the best way to go about it?
Well, I am for the school choice, and that is because I'm seeing people pulling their kids out of school. One of my really good friends, she had to pull her kid out because they were doing asking them to write inappropriate, not bad as, but racial uh, reports, and so she pulled her kids out. And so our children shouldn't be punished. Our parents shouldn't be punished for wanting, a good education. And so I am for school choice. And I think that the money should follow the children. So whether it's a savings account, um, that would probably be the best. A voucher. You don't want to just give them some money and say, here's your money for your school. You need to make sure that they're getting some schooling for it. That's why I'm leaning towards the savings account. It's a, it would be a big, it would be a big job for that.
Hmm.
But add like a health savings account, put that money in. The money goes to the school, or you give receipts. Okay, we bought these books. You know, I go on to
Now,
it. I haven't quite got that laid out yet, but I am for school choice, and I think the money should um, follow the children.
as a follow up to that, I've talked to various families in the last year or so, And there are some homeschool families who would like to take advantage of a school choice program, especially those who saw what happened in schools, starting in 2020, both with things like mask mandates and school closures, but also, by doing remote school over Zoom, they are starting to see some of the nonsense that is being taught. So they pulled
Right.
their children out, but they feel unsupported and unprepared, and they would very much like to have, be able to take that tax money that was otherwise going to the school and apply it to homeschool curricula or a homeschool co-op. On the other hand, I also know several homeschool families who they don't want the government anywhere near them, and they will refuse money because they're worried that once they start taking money, then the government can come in and start uh, regulating how they do their homeschool. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know homeschoolers that they won't take the money because they're afraid of that overreach, the government overreach. So that is something that we would need to make sure is in the legislation that, you know, the government can't tell you where to go, what, what you can buy, um, they can't tell you, okay, well, you have to go to this school or this school. No list of schools. And um, people should be have the freedom. The parents are in charge of their children. The government is not in charge of their children. And so if the government schools are not providing the correct training for our children, they should be able to take them to a school that does in for their culture, and they shouldn't have to pay for it. I know that in the past, of course, you go to a religious school, or if they have kind of put in those charter schools under the government schooling, but there's there's other schools that are, maybe a Christian school, or and they don't get any money. If there's a lot of people that are willing to pay that, but I do think that with all these people pulling their kids out because their kids are not being taught how they want to be taught, they should have some recompense on some compensation on that schooling. Like,
It can help the families now, and also competition. Expanding competition can incentivize public schools to improve. Whereas, if you have a government monopoly on something, there's no reason to improve. I mean, look at the legislature right now. Their special session, they're going to dump even more money into the public school system without any accountability, either to the woke nonsense that they're pushing or to basic student achievement.
right.
So if
And, they've talked about how they'll have a public school and they'll put like a charter school or something next to it, and actually both of their grades come up.
Mhm.
There is that competition. Sorry, dog.
wants to come join the conversation.
Right.
So speaking of public schools, that is another issue that's coming up. A lot of over the last couple of years, parents and families have been getting involved. The public school issue flipped the governor's race in Virginia. Just the other day, just last night actually, a bunch of school boards in Florida flipped from liberal to conservative because parents are getting involved and wanting to have oversight over what their children are learning. What do you think you can do in the legislature to assist parents and families who want to, keep the garbage out of the schools and to raise achievement?
Well, I think transparency is a real key. Um, like when my kids were growing up, I was in their classes all the time, in and out. I was the art mom. I was um, and it seems like now I don't think that this is necessarily true for every school class. I think probably the teachers want the mothers to be able to come in, but I have heard where they were discouraged from contributing to the schoolwork, to the schooling. And so I think we should be able to see all the curriculum. The parents should be able to see all the curriculum. It should be on the website or whatever. I think parents should be able to go in and sit in this classroom and watch. Um, I've even heard where parents want cameras. So, they're working or something, they can kind of watch what's going on in the classrooms. And, I'm not saying that the whole education system is corrupt, because these teachers are working so hard, for these kids. And, um, I think we don't want to, villainize them because they are doing such a great job. But we need to be able to, especially after this experience that these parents have had of being able to see the curriculum on a daily basis and see what's going on, make sure that they know what clubs they're in, and the teacher and the parents should be able to come into the classes. I mean, the teachers want that.
Mhm. Well, they should. I mean, if they're teaching the right things, then they should welcome transparency and
Yeah, like
parental involvement.
yeah, like, I mean, I would go into the classes once a week and do art mom things
Mhm.
and stuff. It actually gives them a little bit of a break.
If
So the legislature is concerned, I would say that about the only thing you could do is for the transparency, you know.
my friend Senator Thane were here, he would remind me that they have passed several things related to, giving parents more choices over school curricula and giving them more flexibility with how their children go through school. But all of those things require parental involvement, and so can only go halfway if the parents aren't willing to come and get involved too in taking a active role in their children's education.
That's very true. We should be encouraging the parents to be involved in their education. I mean, that was the funnest part. But as far as the legislature is concerned, I don't know how you would do that. But
Mhm.
except for like by school choice, you know.
Well, like I said, that would at least give the public schools some competition and some incentive to attract customers instead of just getting them by default.
Right.
So one more big controversial issue that I pulled from your literature, and then we'll do. I've got a few fun questions. Um, Election integrity. That's one of your primary issues that you've got on your materials. What are some of the most important issues regarding election integrity, specifically here in Idaho, that need addressing?
Well, I don't think I'm actually a part of Election uh, Integrity Idaho. We meet, and I don't think that I think Idaho is pretty good. I don't that they haven't found any just glaring fraud. I think we do have a pretty good, stable elections, but what we need to do is make sure that it's strong and there is no opportunity for fraud. For example, the resolution that I sponsored in the state GOP, which I'd like to see a bill put together for that.
Mhm.
I'm going to work on that. And it's it used to be that you had absentee ballots and you had to say why you needed an absentee ballot. It was for those people who could not attend on voting day. So let's put it back to the absentee ballots, and and you know voting should not be a convenience. Voting is a duty. And so go vote on voting day. And whether we have early voting, that's debatable. But I think we should do away with all the mail-in ballots And, that would get rid of all the drop boxes, and it would secure our elections for, the future. That seems to be one of the biggest, and they're saying that that is probably where the biggest place where the fraud would occur if it was occurring, is in those mail-in ballots and the drop boxes. So if we could get that back to, only absentee, you only get mailed a ballot if you cannot attend on the voting day.
That
So
makes sense if you think about the chain of custody. If you go in and vote on election day, you go in, you fill out your ballot, scan it, and it goes into a box or whatever. It's locked there. It's not going anywhere.
right,
But if you drop it in the mail, there's no telling exactly what happens to it between where you drop it and where it's picked up and counted. You just have to trust that nothing untoward is happening.
it's just a weakness,
Mhm.
and so we can strengthen our elections by taking that back, and that's the way it was before. We're not changing it. We're just putting it back to the way it
Right.
was.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at how different states and different countries do it. Um, France doesn't have mail-in ballots because they said they're too. I believe from what I read, they don't have mail-in ballots because they said that they're too vulnerable, and they managed to get their whole presidential election counted on election night. Same thing in Florida; they just had their primaries last night, and they obviously were 20 years ago in the 2020 presidential election. They were the laughing stock of our nation because they had such trouble with their ballots, and so they fixed their system. And now they've got a governor there who's helping make sure that it stays fixed. And what do you know? They managed to count everything in one night. Everybody went to bed knowing who had won and who had lost, and there was no time for shenanigans.
Yeah. And
Idaho can be like that too.
we can. I think Idaho is pretty good. Um, it's just we need to make sure that it's a foundation and there's no possibility of fraud.
Mhm. I
So
think
that's what I would do.
I think a lot, Republicans like to think that it's just a system that will take care of itself because we're all, we're all interested in free and fair elections. But I think there are some activists on the other side who see that as a weakness that they can attack in order to carry out their agenda. So we
Yeah.
need to strengthen the system so that it doesn't it's not doesn't fall prey to the whims of any whoever's in power at the time.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been proponing as a precinct committeeman, this isn't as
Mhm.
elected, but as a precinct committeeman, is the precinct committeeman. We're working on a one pager on how to police your voter rolls. So if every precinct committeeman in the state had, they already have access to it, but say for example they mail out something to all of the Republicans, and if they come back, there's a problem. So then you'd go there and canvass it, and then you would say, okay, these people don't live here. You can go to the county clerk and say, these people, here's the envelope where the mail came back. I went and checked it. They don't live there. Take them off the voter roll.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we wouldn't do a legislation on that, but I think that is a way that we as Republicans can strengthen our voter rolls.
For sure. I mean, I know for myself that there are more voters at my address, previous tenants, previous people who lived at my address who are still on the rolls, and they need to be obviously taken off.
Yeah, we need to take.
Um, I mean, there are things that you wouldn't necessarily do in the legislature. However, as a legislator, I think that gives you a little bit of a bully pulpit. It gives you some influence that you can share some ideas and motivate other people to do things that you don't necessarily have to push through the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and so that's one of the things that I've been proponing. And we've kind of dummied up, a first draft. We need to actually do it, and I think
Good.
that would help a lot because, like you say, I think the county clerk here in Ada County says if they don't vote for like 4 elections, then they get taken off. Well, that could be
Mm,
years, you know?
mm.
So, but then if we're as a precinct committeeman, we only have a small, well, a somewhat small area. Say you only have, 200 or 250 houses that you go and canvass and check out and get to know the people. And then we could secure our voting records, our voting, and that would help a lot because then there wouldn't be anybody that they can vote again.
Yeah.
They don't have any of those names to vote.
Of course, if we got rid of mail-in voting, that would take care of the problem too.
That would take care of it too. But I mean, sometimes we need multiple ways.
Oh yeah, you gotta attack the problem from all sides.
Mhm.
So, I have a couple more just fun questions, but before we get to those, is there anything else, any other big issues that I haven't broached that you want people to know about?
No, I think that we've talked about everything that I would have talked about. So let's go to the easy things now.
Well, what current representative or current or former representative in the House or the Senate do you most admire? Would you want to um, pattern your career after?
Well, I would have said Rod Nate, but he'll be out. Um, so that's a tough one. All the got voted out.
Well, that's I like Ron Nate, and
Yeah,
others like him. They're got these great solid foundational principles. Um, just
I
got to
would have.
figure out how to get enough of those people in there so that they're not just a single person battling against the tides.
Yeah, like I would say Tammy Nichols,
Mhm.
but she's going into the Senate.
Oh, that's fine. That's no problem.
I really like Tammy Nichols too. She's awesome.
Also, once you win, you won't be able to work with her directly, but maybe the two of you can work across the aisle and or not the aisle, the whatever the corridors of the Capitol to the other chamber, and build some consensus on some things.
I really like that Earhart lady too. Earhart, you know,
Barbie Hart.
yeah, Barbie Earhart.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like her. She's very honest and
And she, of course, drew national or even international fire in the last few years for sponsoring the bill to protect girls and women's sports from people who are not girls.
yeah. I saw her in the talked to her a little bit at the hotel in Twin Falls, and she was talking about that. So I think that's very courageous of her to do.
Mhm. Well, and that's the thing about the Eharts and the Ron Nates of the world. They're willing to take a stand even if no one else is.
And they're not afraid to take the jabs,
Mhm.
the arrows, which I can expect.
So, one last question. I want to ask you about your district. What do you like about the 16th district? What is unique about it? What sets it apart from the rest of Idaho, and what makes it a special place?
Well, it's a pretty place. It goes all the way from Franklin through Garden City. Garden City's a nice little town, and then up to Hill Road. So I've been canvassing. I love the old houses. They have so much character, and down in the north end, I go to the 28th. I don't go past 28th, so it's
Hmm.
kind of west part of the north end. And people are so nice. Everybody I've talked to has been really nice, and they care for their city, and they uh, they want the freedoms just like everybody else, but it's got a lot of trees and all, these really old, almost historic houses that are so cool. And um, up on the bench, you can just get to any place. I'm like 5 minutes from Home Depot and the mall and stuff, so it's a nice area.
Looking at the map on the other screen, and you've got a lot of the river running through your district.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Most of all of it. It runs right through it.
yeah.
So we're mostly garden, a lot of Garden City area. Um, and then the north, it's diverse. It's
Mhm.
very because of course, you got Garden City, then you got the North End, and then you have the up on the bench. So uh, I think up on the bench seems to be a little bit more conservative people, but there's a lot down in the North End too.
Yeah, I noticed you even have the mall, the Boise Town Square Mall, is in your district as well.
Yeah.
I can. Oop, that's wrong button. Gonna look like an amateur here.
At least your dog's not barking. Oh, cool.
There we go. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's a nice area. Um, I've been canvassing, knocking on doors and talking to people, and they're just always so nice. They're enthusiastic. They want some change, and
So you've been doing a lot of door knocking over the past few weeks, I assume.
yeah, we'll see. Well, we'll be door knocking the weaker Democrats here, so we'll see if I still say the same thing. But I think people they don't want to be under the government control.
Mhm.
They want they want some freedoms to make choices for themselves, in my opinion. People that I've been,
And and there's definitely something to be said for just going out and meeting people. People, a lot of people there, they're not as plugged into politics as you and I, and probably most of the people watching this. And so they're somebody coming through their door and sharing, their heart with them. I think that really makes a difference either way. So if it's not you, it's going to be your opponent. So you better get out there.
yeah, I have made some really good friends just by knocking the doors. I had to primary. I had to run a primary,
Mhm.
and um, I'm almost on my second canvas of the district. So just I've met some really wonderful people, and I like that so much. I've made friends. I have, my friend base has gotten bigger, and they're all right here in this area.
One of the things I've really appreciated about living in Idaho is how accessible people are, whether they're PCs or, district chairs or, representatives and senators. You can just call them up, go meet them at a place, and have a good conversation. The people in our House and Senate, they're just for the most part, they're just regular people who decided to get involved and make a difference. And I think it's really neat. It's different in a lot of places where there's a big wall between the people and the government.
And I think it's important that we do that so that we don't, get like uppity or, we are representatives of the people. We're not, the controllers of the people, or you have to do this, but we represent the people. And so we need to make sure that we work for those people, not for ourselves, not for, lobbyists or big business or whatever, that we're working for the people. And so that probably gives me the edge over, the guy I'm running against is.
Well, I hope things turn out well for you, and that you're able to get your message out to the people. If the folks who have watched this both live and on the replay, thanks for watching. Where for them? Where can they find more information about you?
Well, you can go to Jackie Davidson, the number 4, Idaho.com. That's my website. You can email me at jackiedavidsonidaho@protonmail.com. And I'll try to get right back with you. And uh, we have, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, go on the website and do a contact me and they sign me up for the newsletter. And we've been sending out stuff, information about our meet and greets and just some of the events that we're having. So I'm running real close with Dennis Mansfield. He's
Mhm.
running, and I'm in the B position. And so we've been having some really good meet and greets, basically at the parks. We do have a meet and greet coming up on September 13th, and that's at a residence house. And we're going to have Raul Labrador there.
Oh, wow.
So if anybody would like to come to that, it's reservation only. We're not giving out the address without a reservation. So just in the contact box, put reserve for Raul, and we'll get back with you and with the address. And it's on September 13th.
Oh, fantastic. I will include links to your site and your email and such in the notes for this when I finally post it as a replay. But Jackie Davidson, District 16, running for State House of Representatives. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Helps. Okay.
well, I will talk to you later.